Hey folks, in this video we're going to talk about ways to find rentals in Lisbon. So I get this question often, but I wanted to give you some links and some resources, some things you need to consider. Since I've lived in Portugal for 3 years now, there are some things that I have learned and some things that you may want to consider if you're looking for a rental property. So I often get the question of how do I find reasonable apartments in Lisbon? And so what you have to consider is that anytime you want to move to anyone's capital city, whether that be Portugal, whether that be the United States, capital cities or cities that are closer to the capital tend to be more expensive in most countries. Okay, if you go to Turkey, if you go to Italy, the capital city is usually going to cost the most, right? So if you are trying to lower your costs, the recommendation would be that you move further away from the city. City dwellings tend, because it's very densely populated, the space ends up being a little bit smaller too. So if you want a larger apartment, you want to consider moving away from the city, not just in Portugal, but any country in which you're staying in the capital city. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be more expensive. Now, with that being said, you got to kind of have a conversation with yourself to discuss what are the amenities that you feel like you need in your everyday life to decide if city life is going to be more appropriate for you, or is it going to be more appropriate for you to be in the suburbs or be in a more rural life. I can't say that word right. Only you can make that decision, okay? So figure that out, what's important to you, and this can kind of help you. So again, we're going to go over some links. I'm going to go over some things to consider and things like that. So now, when you're looking for an apartment in Lisbon, particularly if you're comparing it to the United States, they do T, like there's a T0 through T6. The T stands for how many bedrooms. So if you're looking at the websites I'm going to give you and you see that it says T, and you're like, what does that mean? It's as basically saying typography, how many bedrooms, okay? So there can be, if you're looking for a 1 bedroom, you're going to see T1. If you want 5 bedrooms, look for T5, okay? That makes sense? Now, also the thing is working with a realtor or doing an independent search, or a little bit both. What I found that it's important for me to do that while looking for a place to stay. So the rental market in Lisbon has been insane, especially this summer. I mean, it's just gotten ridiculous. Prices make no sense and it's just crazy. So having to find an apartment now is a bit of an annoyance, but it has to be done. But it also has me being open to either purchasing or renting, leaning more toward purchasing. Now, if you have never lived in Lisbon before, I do not recommend going the purchase route immediately until you really find out what are the problems, what do you consider. So here's the thing, you may have to consider with insulation or very thin walls. Like for example, I love my place, I love my view, but I can literally hear my neighbor fart, okay? That is a very thin wall. So with that being said, you really need to consider some things that if you just come from the US or from wherever and just purchase a property and don't consider those things, you can end up with a property that you spent a lot of money on that you just didn't do your research on, and now you have this investment. We don't want that to happen to you, but again, you're grown, you could do whatever you want to do, right? In this, you also want to determine if you want furnished or unfurnished. Honestly, if you are just coming to the country, it might be difficult to figure out everything you need to do, in addition to dealing with immigration, in addition to figuring out the language, in addition to learning the neighborhoods. Finding out where to purchase furniture and the time it'll take for delivery and how to get it to your house can be a headache you may not want to deal with initially. Okay, that's just my advice. Again, you are grown, you can do whatever you want. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. So of course, this is my second apartment in Portugal since I've lived here, and both of the apartments were furnished. This next move, I am open to getting something that is unfurnished, just because I know a little bit more about how things work and the intricacies, and I'm okay with that. Plus, I'm probably going to be there for a longer period of time, right? You have to make that decision for you, whether you want to do furnished or unfurnished. I get a question often about if someone should bring their furniture from their home country. I do not recommend it. One, the property that you choose may not have the dimensions in which your furniture can fit nicely. So that's going to be an important thing to consider, and you won't know that until you find your property. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend going that route initially. Okay, so let's look into some websites that can hopefully help you get a better idea as to what your options are. So first, we're looking at Facebook Marketplace. Believe it or not, Facebook Marketplace is a great place to check to see if there are apartments within your price range. Now, you may say, when is the last time I logged into Facebook? And I get it. But for a lot of my friends that are from Europe, Facebook Marketplace is a lot of times how they found the apartment that they're staying in. It tends to be a lot more reasonable. There are a lot of for rent by owner type of situations, which are not getting an agency to do it, which means it can be more cost effective because they don't have to pay an agency. So if you still even know what your Facebook login account is, check out Facebook Marketplace. Okay, so the next one is Booking. And Booking is, these are more so, this one's for short-term stay, right? So Booking is one of those websites that I love because of the functionality of its search engine. It allows me to really stream out some things. So let's look at this. I just threw in some random dates. And once you hit search, Booking.com's aggregator is one of my favorites. It just makes things a lot easier. So here you could do it based on hotels. I'm saying I want it to be an 8+ in regards to those are my previous filters. You can do this by budget, okay? And it shows you how many are in that price range based on what you're looking for per night. Popular filters, healthy, but also I want to show you, people always ask me, what's close to city center? Where am I close to city center? You can actually check that out. You could do this based on neighborhoods. So you get to determine and pick how you want to search for this. So check out booking.com. This is for the short term stay. It's not that helpful for rentals for long term, but I'm going to show you some for that. But if you're just starting off, you just got here and you need to kind of get your bearings and figure out where you may want to be, booking.com is amazing. Okay, so of course, many of you know Airbnb. Airbnb is an option that you can kind of do the same thing if you're looking for something short term, give your minimum and your maximum price. So we're not going to spend too much time on Airbnb. Now, this next group is going to be geared more to the people who are attempting to stay longer. And one of the websites is Spot a Home. So you can go here, put in your parameters, and find out what you're looking for. So again, all the links to everything I'm discussing today are going to be in the description box. This website is also specific to Portugal, so you can decide what you want, put in your parameters, and this is for sale, but let's go for rent. And then you can put the parameters you're looking for, and you can see basically how much it costs for apartments in that area. Next is Idealista, which is one of the more popular real estate aggregators in Portugal and Spain and a bunch of other different European countries. So you can choose exactly the location you're looking for. And so this map right here is kind of helpful. So depending on where you want to live, if you want to live closer to the water or if you want to live closer to city center, look at this map and pick the directions and the areas you want to live in, and then it'll pull out all of the listings for that place, for that location. And then if you just want to see everything in the District of Lisbon, then of course you go here and put in your parameters. You may say that the minimum size that you want is 40 square meters, and your price, whatever your price is. The bedrooms, again, you see the T1 through T4, bathrooms, that type of thing. Same standard in the aggregator, and then you'll come up with finding out what you want to rent. So a lot of the websites that exist in the States do exist in Portugal. Here we have Remax, and as you can see, you can put out rentals or purchase and get more information on the various listings that they have. So this is Century 21. Again, you put your parameters in here and you find out if there's an apartment that you're interested in. They have the agent here, and you can contact the agent, or if you have a real estate agent, you can contact the real estate agent yourself. So there's a variety of different websites you can use. Do I go to all of these websites when I'm looking for an apartment? I absolutely do, because what you have to remember about Portugal, I think Europe in general, there is no multiple service listing. So you may go to a real estate agent and you tell them what they want, and they may show you something that's completely different than what you want, because they can kind of only show you what they have in their boutique of this aspect. So that makes things a little bit difficult, and sometimes it may require you to have more than one real estate agent so that you could really see what's out there. And of course, this is Keller Williams. You put rent, put your location, your max and minimum prices, and then you can see some of their listings here. Okay. Now, when you look at the prices, there's always room for negotiation. So be sure to negotiate the prices that you see. They may not necessarily be the prices that the property is worth. So you have to determine that. And here's another website that also lists properties within Portugal. So you have a bunch of different options. Do you have to look at them independently? It helps. Um, these are good resources whether you're purchasing or if you're renting. But again, I'm just showing you what I do in order to look for a rental. So again, for things to consider, like I told you, installation is a big thing. Sometimes the apartments aren't as heavily insulated, which means the walls may be super thin, or when it's cold, it may be really cold. That is some of the things you just adjust to in living life in Europe. So it hasn't been that big of an issue for me. You would have to decide if that's a bigger issue for you. Okay. There can be issues with moisture in the apartments. I personally have not had any experience with that with many of the apartments that I've been with, but you do want to consider that when you're looking for apartments. Older buildings may definitely have the propensity to have some moisture buildup in them. So you want to really look at that. Look to see if there's like this fresh smelling coat of paint when you go look at the apartments that have not been necessarily renovated, because they may be trying to hide something, but it just really, really depends. But you want to consider those things because moisture can be a problem, and then you may have to deal with mold issues. I've had many friends who've had to deal with mold issues, and you don't want to deal with that. Now, if anyone has any recommendations on how to find apartments or how to determine how to not have an apartment with mold in it, be sure to put that in the comments so we can help the community. Now, in regards to leases, it is critical for you to get the lease translated in your home language, because there may be some things that don't even necessarily translate well to your home language if you don't find out. I recommend getting an attorney to just look over the document so that you have a clear understanding what the lease is that you are getting ready to sign. In Portugal, it's having a multi-year lease is more common. So I know in the States, you usually renew your lease every year. Now, Portugal, you can have a lease 3 years, 5 years, it just really depends. That's going to be on your lease terms. You have to fulfill 30% of the lease without penalty technically. So be sure that when you are renting your apartment, that if you're going to do it for 5 years, a year, 3 years, that it's something that you really want to commit to, that you have done your research, make sure that things are intact, that you have a good landlord, things of that nature. Now, in many cases now, there is a desire to have a guarantor. Now, if you just came to the country, where are you going to find a guarantor? That's pretty difficult. So in some cases, people may ask for more months of deposit. So maybe they want you to pay 3 to 4 months up front or 2 more months in deposit. That is a personal preference as to what you negotiate. I personally don't want to offer much more on deposit versus additional rent, because the deposit is not always clear if you're going to get your deposit back, even if you do everything you're supposed to do. And unlike some states, you don't have to put the deposit into an interest-bearing account, and there's these certain parameters in which you get it back. From the experience I've been seeing so far, sometimes people get their deposit back, sometimes they don't. When I moved into this apartment, I didn't anticipate getting it back. Not that, I'm going to do anything horrible to the apartment, but I just know it's not a systematic process of what to do with rentals in regards to their security deposit like it is in the States and maybe some other countries. So knowing that, you have to decide how comfortable you feel giving this large deposit that you may not ever get back. I think the best way of approaching it is expecting not to get it back. And so doing multiple months of deposits just might not be the best choice. So that is something you have to decide. I hope that's helpful. These are just some of the processes in a website that I use over the years, and it are the websites that I will be using to find my next apartment. So until next time.